Hello, welcome back to another episode of Braving the Mountain podcast. I have been so excited for this episode. I am here today with Lauren Pace, and you're like one of my favorite people to chat with because we're realizing, one, how much we have in common, and like, two, we've had a lot of similar life experiences lately, and three, I love everything that you are about. You have helped me so much. So for those of you who don't know Lauren, she's a behavior coach, a child development specialist, and also a mom of four. So you have helped me so much with like raising my own kids and understanding behavior. And I feel like as a mom, when I have been able to understand my kids' behavior, it has helped me shift the way that I show up because before I'd get really frustrated by it and like lose it. And you have helped me kind of come back to myself. So I just wanted to spit that out there. And
I love that.
yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And I just want you to give a little intro to yourself. Like, what has your journey been like? How did you get here? All of the good things.
I love it. Okay, so first of all, I love talking to you too. I think it's so crazy. Every time we talk, we learn something else that's similar about our lives. But what's cool about having like the similarity and then also being on this journey of like understanding our emotions and stuff is like we're talking about it at such a higher frequency than even I would have been talking about it with a friend or with you 8 years ago or something. So I think it's really cool to like be on this journey with someone who's also trying to like learn these things. Okay, so a little bit about my history and my background. So I was a preschool teacher. I had always wanted to be a preschool teacher. I like was pregnant with my first son and I was like, I'm opening a preschool in my home. I sent out registration. I had 3 people registered. And I was really, really excited for that following fall to start my first preschool. But in the March, April, May months of that year, I was struggling with the preschool that I was at. I was at the university and I was struggling with that preschool because I had probably like 7 boys that were really, really, really hard to figure out their behavior. And I was just like, I literally was crying to my boss. I'm like, I don't know what to do because like this kid's stabbing kids with pencils and he's putting a rope around this kid's neck from like the shoelace game, like just thing after thing after thing, like these behaviors that seemingly are like psychopath behavior, but I'm like, no, like we're not going to give up on this kid. We're not going to expel this kid. What do we do? So it put me on this journey of trying to understand kids' behavior. And so I started studying this thing called positive behavior support. And I got so into understanding what our kids were trying to communicate with their behaviors that instead of opening my preschool, I sent back everybody's registration. I was 38 weeks pregnant and I started grad school and I studied positive behavior support there, did an intervention with my thesis research. And ever since then, I've been in this like parenting space where we are really trying to understand like our kids at the root. And a lot of it is figuring out what are they communicating and then how can we prevent so much of this? So it's not like chasing after it with punishments and consequences. Like truly, how can we support this kid with who they are, their environment, and all these things that they need, and so they can thrive. And when I was doing this, and I won't go on too much longer, but when I was doing this over the years, I realized that we can teach all of these things to parents and to teachers and like really understand our kids' behaviors. And they're like, yes, that's what I want to do to implement it. What I was realizing is we'd have these conversations and they would be like, yes, I want to do that. And then they'd go to implement and a kid would do a behavior and they would do like a triggered response. And so it wasn't like an emotionally healthy response, like what we had talked about when they were like in a logical state, they were in a triggered state. And so what I realized is we can't just go at it with strategy. We have to also do some of our own healing in motherhood. And so I've really added just like supports about getting to the bottom of our parenting triggers and understanding ourselves and like healing some of these things that we're just doing because it's our automatic response and stuff that we don't want to be doing the rest of our lives. So long story short, that's why I'm here. That's what I teach about. And that's what I love.
Yes, I feel like it's so good because it's almost like this Trojan horse approach, right? It's like the parents come to you and they're like, I want to fix these behaviors. And you're like, okay, we're actually going to fix you first.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can do a little bit of both, okay?
Yep. And I think that is so needed because even as I look back on my own parenting journey, I see so much, like losing your shit over spilled milk, or
Yeah.
just, you know what I mean? Like little things like that. It's like, where did that come from? And I'm like, probably clear back in the 50s when milk
Right.
was like 50 cents a gallon, and 50 cents was like $1 million back then.
Yeah. Yep.
And we didn't want to waste anything. So tell
Or we
us.
have this belief of you're being careless, or we have this, like, it just goes
Yeah.
back to whatever the belief was that we were learned. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And I think that's what's really interesting as we become parents ourselves, is to look back, and it actually kind of sucks sometimes to look back and be like, oh, this came from this, or this came from this. So let's talk about some of these behaviors, because I feel like one that we really pick up as moms is like people pleasing. And we don't want to pass it on to our kids. And so it's like,
Right.
we know that we want to do better. So like, where do we begin? Let's just talk about the pattern of people pleasing, because that's the first one that like popped into my head.
So like people pleasing is when it's a fawn response, first of all. So we have fight,
Mhm.
flight, or freeze. So fight, we're more irritated, maybe we're yelling. Freeze, we're like just shut down. Flight, it's like we're gonna avoid it. And fawn is like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put your needs ahead of my needs. Because like basically the subconscious belief is like your feelings matter more than my feelings.
Mhm.
And logically, we can sit there and say, no, like that's not how it works. Like we're all of our feelings matter. But like when we're in that fawn response, we are only focusing on making sure that like this person likes me, this person's not mad at me, this person is, just taken care of. And I think there's a balance where it's like, oh, it is good to have empathy and compassion for somebody else, but we can't do it. We can't do it and sacrifice, our sanity in the process.
Yeah. 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 So, and I think this goes into the kind of what we talked about a little bit before we hopped on, is like us feeling responsible for other people's emotions. And I think that we put this onto our kids too. Like, we worry about the emotions that our kids are having. And so we're trying to just control everything. So let's talk about, you did post I think it was a carousel. Oh, it was a few days ago, maybe, but it was the one that talked about how, oh my gosh, what was it? And you
It's
had the
is it
whole
is
cycle,
it's a red
the red
flag if our
flags.
kids are
Yeah.
happy all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's
Okay,
talk about that
so
a little bit.
yeah, let's talk about I love this topic. So first of all, let's just talk about that concept right there, because it's like when you think about like, okay, what do you want for your kids? And you just say, well, I want them to be happy all the time. You really don't. You really, really don't. And I'll tell you why, because if your child like um gets slapped by another child, you don't want to just be like, I'm fine, I'm happy, it's all good, life's good, like whatever. If your child sees that your cat got run over in the street and they're just like super happy, don't even care, no, like this is alarming. If they get in a car accident, if they trip and fall, like we want them to go through the emotions, because it shows that they're having like a true human experience, that they're like their nervous system is functioning. Like we want them to be, humans and have these emotions. So it's a red flag if they're happy all the time. And then also like it's okay if we want them to come back to this calm state, but like even calmness, like even happiness or peacefulness or whatever, like we don't necessarily always want it to be happy. Sometimes it can just be being content. So anyways, that is my rant on that. But I think one of the things about that is the reason why, and this is what the cycle is like we have a hard time when our kids do have big emotions. So now that we know, okay, we don't want them to be happy all the time, and we logically believe that, we're like, oh yeah, you're right, Lauren, I do not want to be happy all the time. Or I don't want my kid to be happy all the time. I want them to, experience life. But then when they start crying or they start whining or they start being angry, then our bodies get triggered. Why? Why is our bodies getting triggered if we just told you, like, no, we believe you, we don't want them to be happy all the time? Well, it's because we have these different beliefs associated with quote unquote negative emotions. And like some of them are from our great, 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 great grandparents, right? So if our great grandma was raising her kid and says, like, no, don't cry, be tough. So then that kid grows up and says, hey, don't cry, be tough. And then that kid grows up and says, don't cry, be tough. We have this like belief in our subconscious that's like, oh, if I cry, I'm not tough and I want to be tough. And so when our kids cry, we're triggered by it because we have this subconscious belief that it's not okay to cry. And the cycle just
Mhm.
keeps continuing. And if we want the cycle to stop, then it has to stop with us. Okay. And
Yeah.
there's gonna be things that our kids pick up from us that are not healthy. But I think that every generation is just trying to do a little bit better.
Yes. And I think this also plays out into how we, not only with our kids, but if we look at this pattern as adults, how we, like, what are some areas, like, maybe give some examples for moms listening, some areas to how this is showing up in our adult life that we are worried about how other people are going to react to things. Because I think that this plays perfectly into setting boundaries, taking care of our own needs, and stop ending like the cycles of self-abandonment. So let's discuss like maybe a few examples of like how our worry over other people's emotions and reactions is actually affecting our lives in a negative way.
So I think, well, I mean, I thought of a couple of different examples. One's like really like kind of a deeper example, and one is just more of like an everyday thing. So we'll go with the deeper first. Like, say somebody is having a really, really, really hard time emotionally, and like for the sake of the story, let's say, okay, my cousin is having a really, really hard time. Like they just are dealing with, they just lost their job, they're not doing well, they're not eating, and so like me being like, okay, wait, I don't want him to feel that way. And so I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to make sure that he has money to live and that he has food and, he's completely taken care of. He doesn't need to worry about anything. And what's kind of hard about this is we're not allowing him to have any growth or say in his experience. And I think sometimes it's like we have to have a little bit boundaries. Like we don't need to have them suffer. We can say, hey, I'm thinking of you. Hey, let's talk. Hey, do you want to have dinner or something like that? But if we take away their struggle completely, then I feel like it's first of all not great for our family situation, right? And so it's not making sure our needs are being met. And second of all, it's not allowing him to take any initiative to get a new job or to get his feet back on the ground because we're not, we want to be able to support, but not completely take away the struggle from someone, as hard as that
Mhm.
may be, because we love our people so, so, so much. But part of loving them is having some boundaries so that they can, support themselves as well. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, support, not remove the struggle.
Yeah, and it's hard too. It's hard because if somebody was like trigger warning, like suicidal or something like that, then obviously you're going to want to be a lot more involved in it. And
Mhm.
I think that it's okay to like know what the scale is. Like if they're struggling so bad with their mental health, then like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be a lot closer to this situation. I'm going to help them with this and I'm going to support them. But still, even then, it goes back to this quote that I talk about with anxiety. It's like, we don't take away the hurdle, we help them jump over it. And so we
Yeah.
don't want the hurdle to completely, we don't want to say, okay, never mind, you don't ever have to work again. You don't ever have to make dinner for yourself ever again. It's like, no, here, I'm going to come over. We're going to watch a show and we're going to freezer pack a bunch of meals for you so that you're set for this week. And then I'll call you every day. And so it's not like this cruel thing, but it's like also, we don't want to take away their struggle entirely. It's just feeding this avoidant response. We want to help them heal it. And we want to be there as a support, but not take away their struggle. So that's one example I
Yes.
can think of.
I love
But
that one.
well, if you want to say anything else on that one, let's talk about that one, and then I'll tell you the other one.
Yeah, no, I think that's the only thing that like comes to mind is like, I mean, even going through the experience of like, we've been in a season of hard and a season of grief and just seeing different people with different urges, I guess you could say, like wanting to help in different ways. It's like you can kind of see some of the patterns that it's like, oh yeah, I can look at this person and be like, okay, you're trying to avoid emotion completely.
Yeah.
And then you start to see how people play out. For me, I like to control. Like that is
Hmm.
mine, is like I like to control and I have to just like take a step back and be like, okay, no, this isn't going to serve anybody. But as far as helping them jump over the hurdle, I can see where a lot of people tend to jump in and over provide that support. And so it's just really fun to look at that and just be like,
Yeah,
it
this
doesn't
is
help them.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't but they believe that it's helping, and they
Right.
believe that, and it's like sad because it's like you're also sacrificing your own family and your own life on the other side of that spectrum to jump in and help this person, like you said. And so, yeah, it's just really fun to kind of, I shouldn't say fun. It is fun for me to reflect on
It's
like
fun.
people's
We're
behaviors
nerds. It's fun. It's fun. Oh, I love
and
it.
just
Okay, so
watch
then
it all happen.
I thought of this other example that just like stuck out to me is like when I first got married and just some of the wives that I was hanging around, they like decorated their house like top to bottom for every holiday and it was so cute and I loved it. And they would do these extravagant dinners and they did all these things and I feel like I started like, okay, well, I need to do that because they're doing that. And so I started doing all these things like
Mm-hmm.
around my house and like it's not necessarily like emotions, but it's like that people pleasing response in us. It's like, I'm doing this for somebody else's validation and not because I actually like doing this. So over the years, I'm like, wait, I actually hate doing this. I like to
Yeah.
hang one banner at Valentine's Day. That's it. I do not like to go head to toe on Valentine's. And I can appreciate that you do, but it's not something that lights me up. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that kind of teasing that apart in motherhood, in adult life, of like, what am I doing that I actually like versus what am I doing to appease somebody else? And that's just one tiny, tiny way. And like a simple thing like decorating our house. Are you doing it for somebody else? Or are you doing it because you like it? Because guess what? It does not have to look like an Instagram worthy, Pinterest worthy house. Like it can just be what you want it to be. And I think like little things like that like can lead us to be more emotionally healthy in the other things if we start setting boundaries with things that are so insignificant and don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, just living for ourselves.
Yeah. I think that's a good one because I hear the mom's voices in my head that they want to do things differently, but they're like, "Oh, what's my mom going to say?" or "Oh, what's my
Right.
sister going to say?" or "Oh, what's so and so going to say?" And it's really easy to be like, "Who cares?" Right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
who cares?
Yeah.
And it feels, I know when I started on this journey, like it felt so hard and scary to step in. So let's talk about the beginning of that journey. As so, okay, we asked the question, like, what am I doing this for me or am I doing this for somebody else? And it's like, oof, I am doing this for somebody else. Okay, I need to put a boundary here. The decorating one is a super easy boundary to put in place. It's like, okay, I don't
Yeah.
enjoy doing that. I'm not going to do it. Let's go just like even a little bit bigger and now start to involve maybe other relationships in our lives of, maybe it's you were raised a certain way and you want to do things differently. I know that I've had some moms who have had guilt over how much screen time their kids get.
Right.
Um, so maybe like everyday life examples that way too, where we start to get worried of like, ooh, what's my mom going to think? Or
Yeah.
what's my sister going to
Right.
think?
Yeah, and I think I think there's gonna be a little of that in the back of our brain with everything that we do that's different
Mm-hmm.
because different is uncomfortable. And I think it's important to know it's gonna be uncomfortable and that's okay. We don't wish that emotion away just because it's there. So a lot of times we don't want to feel that discomfort, and so we just revert back to whatever that person thinks we should be doing. And
Yep.
is it more important for them to be comfortable or for us to be comfortable? And so we just have to really be like, okay, this is what we've chosen for our family and here's why, and stick with it even in that uncomfortable stage.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, let's go with screen time. Like screen time is like a home, maybe let's not do screen time. Let's do like more of like a parenting like okay, so here's a good one. So I wanted to co-sleep. When I got married and had kids, I'm super hippie. You can't tell, but I'm like super hippie, attachment parenting. Don't let my kids cry it out. I had glass bottles until one broke. And so then I ditched the glass bottles. I started with cloth diapers. Like, oh my gosh. Regrets on that one because you already have so much laundry and I'm already so bad at laundry. Anyways, I was super hippie. And this was very different than how I was raised because
Mm-hmm.
I've come from a family of 6. We did not have time for cloth diapers and glass bottles. But anyways, so I distinctly remember having a conversation with my mom and my sister about how I'm going to co-sleep when I have kids. And they were like, that is so, they probably won't even remember this now because they're so like used to it now. Okay. So it's seeing it on the
Yeah.
other side. But at this time, like 10 years ago, it's like 2 years before I even had kids, I'm like, I will be co-sleeping with my kids. That is so dangerous. That's going to kill your baby. They're giving me all these like super scary examples. Like that's what happened to this person's baby and blah, 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 blah. And I remember like being like, I don't like, I don't really care what you do because this is my kid and this is the relationship I want to have with this baby. And the things that I've read about those benefits outweigh your fears. I don't have those fears. And there are safe ways to co-sleep and blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
so I guess like for me, I'm a little bit more stubborn. So it's easier for me to go against the grain a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But when you're making these decisions that you're like, well, I could just like listen to their fears and be like, oh, never mind. My mom told me to not co-sleep or my sister told me not to co-sleep. So I'm not going to do it. But what do you want? Figure out what you want and then get
Mhm.
uncomfortable with them being uncomfortable about it. And also, I think one thing is like, okay, yes, I chose to co-sleep. Once I actually had my kid and started co-sleeping, nobody said a thing. I like had presented it. I had my arguments and nobody was like, wait, you're co-sleeping? Because by the time I had kids, there were so many more Instagram posts about DACA tots and this and that. And there was co-sleepers in the bed. And like it had already like they'd seen enough that they were fine with it. And so I
Yep.
think like sometimes these things take time. So we say it and initially it's awkward, but like over time, they're just going to get used to it. And you just have to live for a little bit in that discomfort when you're setting these boundaries. And I think one thing is if somebody is I've never had somebody so adamant about my parenting choices that it was like they were trying to overstep when they were with me or say, no, we don't do it that way when they're with me. I've never had that. But if I did, that's a time where you'd have to put a boundary for the safety of
Mhm.
your sanity, your parent child relationship, like your values.
Yeah. I love that example because I think it shows perfectly on how we allow fear to drive before the
Mm-hmm.
thing has even happened. You like
Mm-hmm.
had a plan in your mind, right? And you were like, well, I'm going to do this. And I think for some, like for you, yeah, being stubborn, like definitely has served you well in that situation. But I think also for others, it's like they allow that fear to continue driving the car. And so
Yeah.
instead, it's like, oh, I'm just not going to have the hard conversation, or they're going to say it and then they're going to be like, okay, well, maybe I'll just try it like the other way instead of like sticking to their guns and being like, no, this is what feels right for me. And I feel like this is where a lot of times as mom, especially as moms, because I feel like when we're pregnant, people just feel like they can give you all the unsolicited
Oh,
advice
yeah.
ever. And it's like we pick up on that, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
we already during pregnancy, if we're not as stubborn as Lauren, I think there's a lot of stubborn people out there. I think based
There's
on
also a
what,
lot that are not, though.
yeah,
And
and that's where I'm
it's a hard
going
space to be in. Yeah.
is the not, because I was very much opposite. I
Because
definitely am
I
very
like want to
stubborn.
support those moms because it's like it's okay to stand up for what you want because the alternative
Yeah.
is your peace for years. It's going to be years and years and years and years of you
Yep.
not having peace if you don't just live in that discomfort of setting a boundary for a short
Yep.
period of time and they get over it. And if they don't, then that's not a healthy relationship.
Yep. And it took me, because I was the opposite in this time. Like I'm a very stubborn person with some things, but there were some things based on like how I was raised or whatever that like there were certain people and their opinions and they would share it and I would just be like, okay, I need to do this because I didn't want any conflict. And so I would lean the other way and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do it this way. And it cost me a lot of peace for so many years. And now that I have started setting boundaries I mean, we set boundaries in our own ways, right? So in the beginning, I did set some boundaries, like quit giving my kids toys for birthdays because we have too many. But once you start to set the boundaries and you realize you're not going to die doing it,
Mm-hmm.
it gets actually quite fun. Like, I love boundaries. Like, they get
Boundary.
really
Oh yeah,
fun.
you're the boundary queen now.
And you
Um,
start to see it everywhere. And so,
one
yeah, oh, wait, go ahead.
No. Well, so one example that I also thought of kind of with this that's like a little bit different. Like so it's not necessarily like I'm going to parent this way whether you like it or not, which
Yeah.
I was never mean like that. But like basically like there's boundaries like that, but then there's also other boundaries like so I like we would go over to my grandparents' house and I like my grandmas, both of my grandmas, one's passed away, but both of my grandmas are like my favorite people in the world.
Hmm.
But we would go over to one of my grandma's house and like if my kids, like my kids were pretty young, but like if the cousins, like the other grandkids were being loud, then, or if they were like laughing too loud, or, like just getting too rowdy, then like, you guys need to be quiet or grandpa's gonna like, get mad at you. And so like it was crazy because I would go over there so on edge that my kids had to be like perfectly obedient the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
or like my grandpa was gonna get like mad and like yell at them or something. And
Yep.
like I remember getting yelled at as a kid. And so I think part of like my fear of that was like, well, like I know what grandpa's like when he's mad. And so I'm not gonna, so then I'm responsible for my grandpa's emotions. I'm sitting here like I have to keep my kids completely quiet because I'm responsible for my grandpa's emotions. But then at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I'm feeling like, wait, like it's okay for them to laugh too loud. It's okay for them to have fun. And so it's trying to like figure out like how do you set this boundary with someone you respect and love so 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 much,
Mm-hmm.
but they like cannot tolerate the amount of noise. And so what we would do is I would say with my kids before we go in, okay, hey, like grandpa has a really hard time with sounds. And I know that you guys just want to play. So if you want to play, why don't you play downstairs? And if you come upstairs, we're going to be a little bit more quiet. And so I would set like boundaries with my kids, but didn't make them feel like they were responsible for grandpa's emotions. I
Yeah.
would be like, okay, we're going to play quietly downstairs. And I think when they were loud upstairs, or like my grandparents would make a comment, I'd be like, oh, yep, they're just having a good time. And if you want, you can
Mm-hmm.
tell them to go play downstairs, but you don't need to like get mad at them for like being happy. I didn't say
Yeah.
that second part, but I would say you can say go downstairs if it's too loud for you. Like it's not
Yeah.
my job to control your emotions. It's your job to control your emotions. And if you need to step away, that's even better. But he was
Yeah.
kind of like in a chair. So
Yeah. Oh, these are so, so good. So many things that I can just like see looking back that
yeah.
okay, I love it. I love it all. And I feel like this is very supportive for moms out there who are like, wait, I don't know how to do this. And then also
Yeah.
just hitting really quickly on like our last little piece, let's talk about, because I feel like a lot of these too are like also external boundaries, but like also let's discuss a little bit of like internal boundaries that we decide that we don't have to like speak to anybody else, right? We can kind of decide what is, I don't know, some that I have is like, okay, I'm actually not going to talk on the phone with this person. I'll text them. Or
Right.
I set time limits. If somebody pops by, like, sure, I'll give them 20 minutes or whatever. And then if it continues to be a pattern, then it will become like an external thing that I say to them. So can we just discuss like just some of those differences that we can utilize with
Well,
family,
I
with
think it's
kids, whatever.
it's so important for us to know like our threshold of tolerance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I talk about on my page is like the volcano analogy. So we all
Mm-hmm.
are like volcanoes, and we have all of these different triggers, all of these different personalities and needs inside of us. And when like there's things happening, say I got a phone call from a friend and she told me something really upsetting that happened, and then I also my daughter just screamed and I have a really low threshold for sound and all these things, it starts to add up and our lava explodes. And I think we have to be aware of some of the things that set us off. And like what you're saying, it's like for you, like time is really important to you, or like maybe you don't want to be caught in a phone call with somebody who belittles you. So maybe you text them instead. So you have these
Mm-hmm.
things, right? And those are all ways we can bring down our lava so we're not exploding all the time. And so I think one of the things to be aware of is that like if my sensory threshold is too high, there's too much noise, I put on my noise canceling headphones. If I'm not saying kids, well, sometimes I am. I'm saying kids, be quiet. But sometimes I am. That's called an
Yep.
explosion.
Yep.
But if I want to do it in a better way, it's like, how can I reduce the lava inside of me without exploding? And so it's like taking a break, walking away, noise canceling headphones. I love what you said about like texting with a friend instead of calling this certain friend, because that was something that was triggering me over and over and over again with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And when I backed away from that, like I was so much more regulated in my life. And I
Yeah.
think that being aware of some of these things, and we can find them as we're like journaling or just as we notice ourselves getting triggered, write some of these things down. But just like being aware of what that is to each of us is like so valuable to becoming
Yeah.
the parent that we want to be.
Yes. So good. So good. All right. So for those, I always ask one final question, but for any mom who is getting ready to like brave her metaphorical mountain, right? She's ready to brave her mountain. She's wanting to like kind of shift how she shows up. What is one piece of advice you would want to leave her with today?
If you want to brave your mountain, I love that so much. I think, honestly, one of the biggest things, besides what I just said about the volcano and like bringing down a thing in your lava, is like taking the moment to pause. Okay. So when we are triggered, when we like feel responsible for somebody else's emotions, when we like whatever, instead of jumping straight into the reaction, the trigger happens, we have some pause, then we can respond in a way that we're like actually proud of. And for me, sometimes I go straight to that. Like I'm a little bit impulsive. I go straight to that response. But if I can take a minute to pause and process, then I'm much better able to show up how I want to show up, especially as I'm setting these boundaries and like realizing, some of the habits that I was stuck in and like trying to do it differently.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, for anybody who does not know where to find you, tell us where you hang out.
Okay, so I am over on Instagram at rising.motherhood, and my website is rising-motherhood.com. And I have like this free guide that I'll send to you, Amanda. It's called the Calm and Collected Mama 5-Step Guide to Healing Parenting Triggers and Supporting Your Nervous System. So where I talk a little bit more about this, and it leads to some of my other coursework. So if you want that, it will be with Amanda.
Yes, we'll put it in the show notes. I just want to say thank you so dang much for being here today. I feel like I learn so much, and you have helped me show up as a better mom for my kids. Like you've helped me through a lot when my little boy was experiencing anxiety years ago, just all sorts of things. So thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for this episode to go out.
Me too. Thank you so much.